A warm welcome to all the panelists and the audience this evening. As hospitality is expected to rebound from an unprecedented shutdown, government regulations vary region to region, even city to city as to when and how lockdowns are being lifted and made less restrictions. Hence, demand and customer behavior is severely impacted by these regulations. How each one of us individually reacting to it and how different businesses takes different approaches makes it even more difficult for hotels to predict the future. In terms of demand, we are starting from the scratch. So it's understandable that many hotels are desperate to capture whatever demand they can find and however they can find it. There's no doubt there's a lot of temptation there to fill rooms with any available demand. But one thing is for sure, there is certainly uncertainty. Uncertainty around the recovery pace, uncertainty around the type of business that will come back first, uncertainty around how much market share you can gain. So with all this, let's see where does revenue management stand, and of course there is always been a lot of reluctance when it comes to the profile of this function, especially, and many still believe a hotel can be operated successfully with a limited revenue management or without revenue management. So firstly, I would like to clear the air for our revenue folks out there. So to start with our very first question, with Devinder, yourself. So in an environment where there is absolutely no demand to capture now, or if any, pretty marginal and insignificant, is it questionable whether the revenue management role becomes obsolete or could be a merger with other functions? Let's start with that. A quick start with that, and then we'll move on to the other part.
Sure. Thanks, Subramanian. So the revenue management, if you see, has been very critical kind of a support to the entire revenue stream. If you see when in the normal scenario, whenever there is an H2, for example, November onwards to March, you see high demand and you align your pricing to drive max ARRs. But when you enter H1, when there is little demand or demand is less than the supply, you still have revenue manager sitting there, capturing your market share, getting whatever business can be converted. So this is the same way in the COVID situation which we are thinking. It's a kind of a wave. It's one of the season which is coming into play. Although the segmentation has reduced with respect to the corporate traveler, your MICE and all, but still you have a segment which is coming in quarantine business, BCP business, staycations, workations. Those kind of segments still exist, and you have to ensure that you get the right segment at the right price with the right distribution channel. So you have to be, it is very challenging, yes, the demand is limited nowadays. For me, revenue management can never be obsolete if the demand exists, whether it's limited or on a higher side. You still have to earn some revenue for the company. You have to still analyze your data, what kind of segment you are still catering to, where you can get additional demand. You still get engaged more of the OTA partners to drive retail demands. You get still engaged with your sales partners to how to convert leads, what kind of pricing we can float, what kind of package promotions you can make live. So there is always one of the guy has to sit there in the office or at the back office to understand the pace, how it is going on, although it's very sporadic. Earlier we used to have like 2019, when you have a lot of revenue management solutions, you have pattern of transient demand and a little bit of group demand. You still could be able to do forecasting. Now the forecasting has very become sporadic. You have to place a
We'll get there in a moment on forecasting, Devinder. Thank you very much. Ram, would you like to add your comment on this? Does revenue management becomes obsolete, or does it have an opportunity to get merged with the other functions?
Thanks, Kumar. I think this is one question a lot of people have been asking nowadays. Are revenue managers required? I think the reason for this question is primarily because I think we still as an industry don't know what a revenue manager does. In many cases, a revenue manager is like a channel manager who just manages channels and does nothing else, or a report manager because all they do is sit there at the back end and generate data and charts for people. I think this revenue manager is definitely a lot more than this, and it's green shoots which you're going to see pretty soon. And you need someone out there looking at it. The next important thing out there is this is a time where the hotel needs to be available on all distribution platforms. I'm not talking GDS, I'm not talking website. There is a whole lot of connected platform out there, and I can see my friend Kamesh smiling out there because I'm sure he's going to talk about that out there. But there is a whole bunch of distribution platforms that the hotel needs to be present on and selling the same pricing. I mean, who's going to do that? You need a qualified person doing it out there. The last thing is the revenue manager definitely is not what it was in the pre-COVID era.
Yeah,
Many
that's
of
my
the
next point. Actually, I'm
yeah.
getting there. But the real challenge now is with absolutely no demand. Uh, what does actually a revenue manager do at this point in time? I mean, what additional responsibilities probably he could look up?
So one thing I definitely am advising the revenue managers in our hotels is, what, this is like a time which I'm hoping that they never get in the future, because this is the time where they need to go and review the content, refresh the content. I don't know when was the last time they actually were selling rooms. In all cases, if you go and look at the way that a hotel room has been sold, it's been 45 square meters with a large work desk. That's not what the client of today is going to be looking at. So this is the time where the revenue manager needs to be reviewing and refreshing content across all platforms. The revenue manager today needs to actually be wearing multiple hats, including that of an asset optimizer. I'm not going to be talking about asset management. What I mean by asset optimizer is different hotels has different areas which they could be looking at making revenue from, and he or she needs to be the person that is holding the revenue culture of the hotel in order to ensure that the revenues of the hotels are objective. I mean, the best way to put it for me is the revenue manager needs to be like a lever right now. When you have to lift something heavy, you use a lever to push it up, right? And that should be the function that a revenue manager needs to be doing.
Thank you, Ram. Ravish, would you like to add your comments, please? You need to unmute your mic.
As a practicing revenue manager, there is no doubt that our core is not there. So in terms of what used to engage, our time that used to be completely engaged in a very particular buoyant times when pricing decisions used to really take away most of our time. I think some of the things where all of us need to engage, which is what a global revenue manager, and I don't think so India has ever started to look at. For example, airline pricing, okay, which is as a combination of hotel rate. Now, even if tomorrow the hotels were to open and come out with a pricing, which let's say for a Goa hotel, and you can get a steal at a Goa hotel. But at the same time, the moment state control air pricing goes away, and the air tickets are really, really expensive. So does one even think that, whether the hotels would go back to occupancy, even if the price is one that is friendly? So one has to today start looking at an outlook, while it may be a controlled air ticket cost right now. But how prepared are you you're looking at all those things? And what is the possibility of a cross collaboration today with airlines? Revenue managers have never looked at all those things, ever. Even though global revenue managers, global leisure locations, Hawaii, for example, as a destination would always factor both the airline and the hotel pricing. So those are the things that today when we talk that leisure is going to find a focus, city hotels are going to be challenging. And even if the company has to gain money through leisure locations, what is it and how is it that you would make the stride and gain more?
Sure. Thanks, Ravish. But we, as Ram pointed out, that was my next question to the panelists here. We still have a vast number of revenue professionals operating pretty comfortably in their silo with of course, clearly defined boundaries related to the roles and responsibilities, more of towards distribution, I would say, or channel management, as Ram pointed out. But, the industry demand was pretty strong, life was good, the going was good, everything is fine. But however, in a post-COVID-19 world, this approach is no longer going to work. So what is exactly the specific role? I'm coming back to the same point. What is the exact specific role of a revenue manager post-COVID-19, and how critical is it today, when especially demand is yet to start, when hotels are expecting to rebound from this pandemic? Devinder?
Yeah, thank you. So post-COVID situations, everybody is looking at the V-shaped recovery, and we have to be prepared accordingly. So yes, for example, the booking pace is shrunk down because supply is more than the demand. It's definitely, and times to come when airlines open, global airlines open, get operational, you will find the pricing again going dynamic pricing happening in the airline structure, and again the pre-booking, advanced booking will start. So you have to understand those trends in order to get the demand capitalized in the max, basically at the right price at that time. You have to open again advanced purchases offer to cater to that demand. So again, those segments, corporate, FIT, MICE will kick in, travel agent will kick in. So you have to be prepared. So how will you get prepared? You need to understand the data which is coming to you currently. Whenever you start seeing the data, you will observe there is just some change is happening, and there is a weekend trend behavior is changing because of some demand which is kicking in. So revenue manager has to understand all the data points, and he has to be with the optimum pricing throughout 365 days.
Thank you, Devinder. So let's move to Ravish quickly. When you talk about data, what's the quality of data that you see today, which is actually helping these revenue managers to make some informed decisions? I mean, how clean is this data? What's the interpretation of the data? What are the different sets of data that you look at?
So, so I work with many hotel companies across. So, so India's revenue management quality operations ranges from, in terms of mediocre to, some that are very, very compelling demonstration. There are hotel companies which rely on data and analytics and make extremely informed choices. However, there are islands of excellence. There isn't something, India really is. And therefore, I find your question to be opportune as to there are things that a typical revenue manager hitherto has not looked at and has not focused at bringing his role to the level of professionalism that what a global revenue manager typically stands for. Just being an expert on Excel sheets and creating your VSB lookups and pivots is just not what a revenue manager is. Just also doing a role of a reservation does not qualify you to become a revenue manager. I think today, when the days will be extremely challenging, what is it that you're doing in terms of business development? What is your pursuit? So it's just not saying that, when the days were good, that you were refusing business and saying that, listen, there is a better business to be taken for the future. Things are going to just go completely awry. And therefore, how is it and what is it that you're doing in terms of studying your market? I think this, for the next 6 months' time, is an outstanding opportunity for us to just study the buyer behavior, the buying behavior, understand our market, understand the feeder point. The whole segment is completely, groups have gone away. There is going to be no bulk purchases. People are going to be looking at your position to say, listen, how are you going to replace this business? And therefore, you are going to be under tremendous stress and pressure. So, and those are the things that I really think that, and these are the things that are coming in from data and analytics. And one other point that I just wish to as my parting point here, I think any brand, so when I used to work in a hotel, we as hoteliers are only aware of the people who come and stay at the hotel, okay? So if you today say that what's your conversion factor, and you say my conversion factor is at 20-25%, so the next question is that what's happening to your other 70-75% of the people who are calling or writing to you, why are they not converting? Regrettably, no hotel company does any measure of the brand call, so you don't know what is your demand factor. While you may do, you may do your pickup and other stuff that is happening, which are statistical tool, but you never know that of the 500 people, what was my state of readiness to sell at different price points. And I think these are the things.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but is that to do with the quality of the data? Because we know that, I mean, my experience, I have seen that, hotels are currently spending hours and hours each day manually compiling reports, only to realize that the next day, it's absolute the following day, right? So again, you start the whole process all over again, and you again start, pulling out all those Excel reports, conversions, and all of that, and the next day again it becomes obsolete. So you're only busy generating reports, for the wins and fancies of whatever way you want to look at the data, but the data is actually not giving you any story, right? Yeah. Ram, would you like to add more to that? In terms of the data?
I mean, I think from data point of view, your data is as good as what you enter. Okay, so if you entered crap, you will get crap. Sorry to put it so bluntly out there. And there is a lot of, that's been something I think we as revenue managers have been fighting for a long time out there. But I think what is important going forward is to answer your question specifically, what kind of data should a revenue manager be looking at? Okay. Number one, I think Devinder mentioned this, that there's hardly any pickup. So, going and analyzing and turning around and saying, I have 2 rooms picked up, 3 rooms picked up, etc., is not going to be the data for you to look at. I think if I bundle my data into different buckets, some of those data that I would be looking at is going to be more of guest data source, which is going to be that, hey, who are the guests who stayed with me in the past and actually had a higher incremental spend at the hotel. This is similar to the statistics that casinos do, right? They give free rooms to the high rollers because they know that, hey, what, I'll make more revenues from them. The same way, there are people who pay lower rates but spend higher in F&B. Have you looked at those kind of data points? Another, I mean, that's just one example I'm going to use from every bucket. Otherwise, I could talk for the next 30 minutes. The next one, but that is important, is public. Unfortunately, we don't have the time, so I'm not going to spend that time away. Don't worry. But anyone who wants to talk, I'm available for a one-on-one of that. The next one is, of course, public reputation, which is your online reputation data. The customer is going to be looking at something specific in future. They are not, I mean, the easiest way is if you look at what airlines are doing. Airlines are no longer talking about comfortable seat, big aircrafts, or their partnerships, etc. They are talking about health and safety. They are talking about, so the idea is to understand what is the customer looking at, those kind of data points. The third thing that is important is to understand the data by channel, because ultimately discounting and filling up your hotel at a lower price is the easiest that anybody can do. Okay, so I think it is to understand the cost of sale of every area and try to see where you can maximize it, because there are going to be channels that will drive you high volumes but at lower profitability, but there are going to be channels which will drive it to you out there. The last thing is, of course, and I think this is the most critical area, especially for a hotel which is going to open up, is the data that a revenue manager can provide to the operations team, so that the operations team is able to maximize their available resources. Okay, now that is something that a lot of them haven't been looking at, and I believe that that could be the fourth set of points that you can be looking at. Outside this, of course, is the regular set of data, which I think Devinder and Ravish have been mentioning about your call drop data or your conversion data, etc., etc.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Ram. And when we talk about the demand, as of now, the demand is just yet to start. We know that while the international borders are yet to open up, everyone is anticipating for the domestic tourism to start in the near term. But staycations and weekend getaways are expected to be the main demand in the short term or even the medium term. So, are we designing some kind of a domestic tourism packages to lure our outbound travelers for the next 2 to 3 quarters? I would like to come to Amit Taneja. That are you designing any special domestic tourism packages to attract the domestic market? So all eyes are on domestic market, as we all know.
Yeah, and sort of rightly pointed out, these are very, very uncertain times. These are not times that I think any of us have seen or even imagined before. But as I said, obviously, the recovery that we sort of see is going to be a phased recovery, right? It's not going to be a sort of suddenly floodgate locally and people will start looking to travel. I think it's going to be a very, very phased recovery, which basically means there are certain markets which will open first than the others, and then there are obviously certain type of people who will probably look at before. But I think, and when we kind of look at the context of India, and I can sort of give you a little bit of flavor in terms of what's been happening in UAE and the wider Middle East, where essentially the movement within the country has been there been far more relaxation, and generally the situations around the virus situation is widely coming under control. So yeah, I think when we look at in the context of India, it is definitely, I think the domestic tourism will probably is likely to take up faster, and I think there also you will probably see sort of, before people start booking into the destination, which are at a, flight away, you will probably see sort of more sort of drivable distances where people, families are more comfortable, five to 6 hours of driving, and which will be around sort of the metros, the Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata. So I think these are the sort of markets we will probably see sort of recovering faster, and and that's exactly sort of what we are sort of the demand generator. We are sort of looking at, okay, how do we sort of go and look at attracting these sort of the set of customers which are and sort of use the available information profiling that we have with the customer with us, use the new data, sort of the artificial intelligence and the other data techniques that we have to sort of look at in terms of how do we look at targeted users. So just to give an example of that, UAE open restriction in terms of movements within the Emirates and effectively sort of hotels to start opening their leisure facilities, and so then how do you sort of target your sort of domestic audience which is there in the UAE to sort of get them for a staycation, and then sort of that's something that we started about 4 to 5 weeks back. A similar sort of that the strategy will be working towards other markets, including India, in there. And yeah, so unfortunately, this is gonna be the new norm, and as we sort of look at, and it's a fairly evolving situation at this point of time, right? I think we all have been sort of looking at it, and we've been trying to sort of make sure that we stay nimble and we are ready.
Absolutely, that's the only way to
our plans in case there are changes to the. But I think the other interesting thing, which obviously is very, very interesting, is that even in the international, we might see a certain bubbles of travel, which will probably open up much faster than the wider sort of So, for example, within the GCC, I think will be probably people traveling from Saudi to UAE and UAE to Saudi. So these are the sort of the bubbles, I think, which are likely to open in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and so these are the sort of scenarios that we are working on, and then sort of looking at, okay, which are the sort of segment of our customers are likely to sort of undertake the travel for that, in terms of sort of making sure our communication to them is personalized, our sort of target to these customers is personalized in terms of what they want to sort of
Sure.
want to see in the next near to medium term. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Quickly, we'll move on to Parikshit. Parikshit, especially with different governments, posing regulations which varies predominantly from city to city and state to state. So, how does specifically the domestic market behaves for Go MMT?
Okay. Thanks, Kumar. And I think it's an interesting perspective to look at. Fundamentally, if I look at, there are 3 stages of this pandemic, right? First stage was when everything was shut down. So this phase was probably April and May. That is the point in time there was nothing happening, right? And then probably the current stage that we are in, Kumar, is probably where we see gradual opening up of transportation, and also gradual opening up of some bit of hotel activity as well, right? This is the second phase. And probably the third phase is going to be when you have the full-scale demand coming back. That probably is a couple of quarters away, unfortunately, till the vaccine comes or till the overall situation improves a little bit. As far as the current stage is concerned, Kumar, I think you rightly pointed out, this is the time when the governments are slightly, if I might use the word, panicky, where you would see knee-jerk reactions coming in. While overall, because of the economy being under some bit of stress globally, I think many governments have taken a call of opening up the economy, and I think India also have rightfully opened up the economy significantly. However, at state levels, there are still bubbles, right, where you see suddenly a Karnataka number going up, and then you suddenly see the local government there, the state government there taking penal actions, right, and kind of quickly trying to do that. So such kind of uncertainty, unfortunately, will exist in this second phase that I was talking about, right? And at Makemytrip, what the essential way what we are trying to handle this situation and create demand for all our partners, whether it is hotels, airline, or any other transportation partner. I think the first phase is to create the confidence in the minds of the consumers that if you take appropriate precautions, then traveling is probably not that bad, right? So for that, it is very important to kind of create that confidence that if you wear your mask, if you're kind of using your hand sanitizers, if you're kind of doing multiple amount of things that you do as a traveler, you are safe. The second bit on the supply side, it is important also to kind of give that comfort to the consumer that the suppliers or partners are taking adequate measures to foster that kind of confidence. So, for example, the hotel ecosystem, right? I'm sure we were, and I was hearing everyone was talking about how traditional hotel revenue management works, right? Fundamentally, I think time has come to relook at that entire spectrum of revenue management. And I think revenue managers also will play a role in creating demand, right, at this point in time. And there, I think there need to be visible markers, which are safety markers, which you want to communicate at your marketing channel. For example, are your front office using Arogya Setu app, which can be shown that it's green whenever the user comes in? Very, very crude example, but you create visible markers and then translate that on the mouth of the funnel, and that kind of creates a lot of confidence in traveling. As far as
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as states are concerned, right, in Makemytrip also we have tried to get in the travel restrictions called out upfront. There is something called as e-pass, which is available now for traveling in certain markets, and we have tried to help the traveler to kind of come to the site and apply for an e-pass and then travel. So there are multiple things that we are doing on the OTA front to kind of ensure that there is ample demand. Unfortunately, some bit of uncertainty will remain, but it's how do we kind of take that on the stride and move forward and then communicate a positive vibe to the end consumers using technology probably would be a very, very key enabler to get demand back.
Thank you for that, Parikshit. So especially when you talk about a revenue manager's role here, it's more to do at a micro level. Right? So there are many indications hotels need to become more micro market and micro segment focused with an agile approach at this stage. And so the more you can learn about your potential customers and be better prepared, you'll be able to service their needs. So we expect a drastic change in our customer behavior too. So does this mean actually you need to look at restructuring the market segment wrong, right? You get what I'm saying, Ram? So is there a need to look at restructuring the market segmentation for the hotel, looking at a bit more micro segment level?
Look, I don't think...
Micro market level. Yeah.
Thanks. So I think, if you ask me in a short term, do you want to relook at your revenue management market segment? No, I don't think so, because I'm assuming that a lot of hotels have their market segments in terms of both. The market segment is not just on rate cats or on your kind of customers. It's also down geo, etc. So I'm assuming that the hotel has, ideal hotel has these things in place, because that is like the basics or the foundations or the fundamentals of revenue management, right? To have kind of the right market segments out there. Now, as far as things go forward, if you ask me, do we need to have a separate market segment to handle this? No, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, what is going to be traveling is going to be the domestic traveler, as we are talking, is going to be a leisure transient traveler. So I'm assuming that a transient segment in your hotel is set up into corporate and leisure, so that you are easily able to identify. I think what is more important out here is the revenue managers kind of identifying which is the segment that is traveling and pricing themselves accordingly. Even now when I go and look at some of the hotel websites, I see things like business traveler offers sitting out there. hey, we know for a fact it's business travel is not happening at this point of time. Do you want to have a business traveler offer sitting out there, or do you want to have an offer that purely targets the staycation traveler out there? So I think what is very important is more than creating market segments for the sake of reporting purposes. I think it's important to have pricing based on the right travel that is happening out there. And I think this is definitely, there is micro segments you need to be looking at, be it local staycation travelers or drive-through travelers. There is definitely something else that is going to be attracting them. And I made this statement in one of the previous webinars as well. They are not going to be coming and staying for four walls and a ceiling. We have all been stuck in that four walls and a ceiling for the past so many months. So I think it's experience that's going to be driving it more.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ram. Ravish, would you like to add more comment on that in terms of looking at micro segments?
I completely subscribe to what Ram is saying. I don't think so that in the short term, while we will discover, depending on what is the kind of demand, I don't think so that there is a shakeout that's necessary in terms of segments. That is, I think everything will come back to the way it was, and we will forget everything in maybe about 2.5 to 3 years time. And that time, everything, whether it is from a bulk to, so, one is talking about horizon as to how we prepare ourselves for the next 2 years, 2.5 years. So, nothing really. I mean, yeah, of course, each hotel will stereotype and develop things but I think as a general industry trend, I'm not sure if industry is going that way.
So, thank you, Ravish, for that. So there's another way to look at it is, are there any different options today for travelers? So let's say, for example, when we talk about especially staycations and weekend getaways, what do you feel, Parikshit? Will the travelers be more focused towards staying in an hotel or Airbnb kind of accommodation facilities that are available to destinations which are more specifically accessible within 2 to 4 or 3 hours, 4 hours of drive? So have you seen any kind of shakers and movers on that?
Hey Kumar, let me tell you, if I speak to 10 people around me on telephone today and ask them, are you willing to travel? 9 of them are saying, yes, I am, with appropriate precautions. I think all of us have been kind of on the receiving end as far as staying at home and looking at this screen and talking to people, and we all miss the human touch, right? So the pent-up demand, I think, is huge. I think the gap is going to be the confidence, right? So I think one of the panelists made this point, and I just can't recollect who made it, but I think the time has come to probably do some changes with respect to the way you target. Many of the hotels would probably be targeting outbound customers, right, or significant customers from the leisure segment. Now, it's important to relook at that segmentation and try and see how you can approach the micro or the semi-local markets. So maybe 200, 300 kilometers of a radius, and then you try and go overboard in targeting these kind of customers. Also, it would be important to look at niche demands that might come up. So I was talking to one of my hotelier friends the other day, and he was saying, I have a hotel in Goa, and I'm trying to target a set of, these work from home guys who are actually at Bangalore, who want to drive down to Goa and spend maybe 15 days working from my hotel. And I'm trying to target it. And he shared a couple of flyers with me, which were beautifully done. It said, you get a safe workstation, you get a Wi-Fi access, you get beverages, and it's like nicely packaged. So what I'm trying to say here is, Kumar, that these are unprecedented times. Latent demand is significantly there. It's all about, smartly looking at that demand and then trying to figure out your innovative ways to kind of get some market share back. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is going to get you to 60-70% occupancy. What I'm only trying to say is that this is going to push the needle up gradually. Staycations, work from home options. So these are probably areas where we need to actually look at, and then very gradually. These are frustrating times, but if we don't take these steps, then we will not make that micro progression that we are all looking forward to as far as the overall demand is concerned.
Thank you, Parikshit. Amit, your quick comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's in the short to medium term, and also sort of I think COVID is going to change in terms of how sort of corporates or generally the travel is or the sort of how your definition of work in there, and but yeah, one thing is for sure. I think the demand and the need for travel is not going to go away. It's just that in terms of how people travel, what's the preferences for people to travel, and it's going to be like, I think COVID is going to be, due to the travel industry, what probably 9/11 did to the security, right?
Right.
Essentially, and about close to 19, 20 years away from that, and today we don't mind the security checks at the airport, right? Whereas those of us who sort of also used to travel pre 9/11, that was a big change, right? Everybody had to sort of factor in about half an hour of body searches and all that, and today it's become a normal. Yeah, so I think but in the short to medium term, yes, the safety becomes very, very important when anybody is looking to travel, whether it's for leisure, whether it's for work, whether it's single travelers, or whether traveling with family. So I think that's where I think the bigger brands have a slight edge over I would call the independent hotels or the sort of the Airbnb, just in terms of the predictability of the experience. And also I think this is also a time for hotels to sort of step up and sort of start communicating more proactively with their customers in terms of what are the safety protocols they're using, just to get the reassurances to the customer. I think that's where I think the hotels can learn a lot from the airlines. And today, you go into every airline is talking about, how sort of they are getting ready, or what are those, and all those sort of planes which are flying, how they're making sure that the health and safety is of paramount in there. So I think that's sort of that'll be a big sort of not only a sort of assurance to people, and also it becomes a fairly important measure to sort of attract businesses towards you. So I think that's where I think the bigger brand and the hotels which sort of does a very good job in communicating to the customers and actually following that will have a big advantage in there. I would also like to sort of comment in terms of we were talking about previously about the segmentation. I think what is going to do is definitely your traditional way of looking and segmenting that business is going to change forever. And the reason for this is, I think one of the COVID will become a landmark for a couple of events, and also for a couple of data points for people. I mean, we all are very, very comfortable with online shopping, but in case if we kind of look at the certain data, which is coming out from North America, in terms of the overall retail, it took about close to 20 years of the e-commerce players being around for the total US retail to notch up to about 14 to 15% of the online share. In the last 4 months, it has actually doubled. Now, this is not going to reverse back to when things come back to normal, and obviously people talk about the new normal, whether we call that a new normal, we call it in terms of how life used to be pre-COVID. It's not going to come back. And then when you sort of look at every year that the new consumers that we have every year who sort of comes in, start into the earning cycle, this is fundamentally going to change, and this is also fundamentally going to change in terms of how employers used to sort of look at their workspace, right? And all of us in the last 5 months have learned to work from home, right? Which I don't think anybody could have imagined 5 years.
That's a big cultural change.
Yeah, do I really need an office? And also the other thing is, something which where, the face-to-face meetings that were considered to be very, very integral part of doing business. Essentially, we all realize that probably, 60-70% of that work could be done, using the these virtual platforms. And they might not be very, sort of, effective at the first go, but, hey, we are at a stage where we are adapting to that. But, if there's somebody like, who's into the first couple of months into travel, that becomes like like this is how normally the things are being done. So I think that's sort of looking at that, but that definitely will mean that,
Thank you.
the reason for traveling will change, but people will still continue to travel. So that means as an accommodation service provider, we'll have to make sure that how we are tailoring and adapting our product to the needs for these customers, right? And I think the brands and the service providers who are able to sort of, do that far more effectively than the others will be the ones who will come out much stronger post the pandemic.
Thank you, Amit. One thing is very clear that obviously life is not the same in many ways for all of us. So, with all this uncertainty, how does one predict what's going to happen in the let's say in the coming quarters? With all this uncertainty, how do hotels forecast when forecast looks almost impossible? Historical data of 2019 becomes a bit of an irrelevant. There is no revenue coming in. There is no demand kicking off in the near future. So forecast could possibly be the biggest nightmare of all the revenue managers. So how does the pandemic impact the demand forecast for hotels, and what valuable information hotels must gather in order to tweak and adjust their forecasting variables, and how technology can help on this? I think before Joy loses his patience, I'll quickly go to him. Joy, you'd like to give me a comment on this?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because this insidious virus has not spared anyone, whether it is virologists, epidemiologists, mathematical models, statisticians. All forecasts have been proven wrong with alarming regularity. So whoever said it will be 50,000, it has been 5,000. So I will not venture into forecasting, because that's one of the primary jobs of a revenue manager, right? And in this pandemic situation, to do a forecast and be proven wrong, I think nothing could be sadder than that. But I would like to first venture on what kind of data set, and Ram did mention about data. So a point is, what kind of data are you looking at? Just comparing your own data with your own data and coming up with any sort of forecast or any sort of actionable plan, I think is a little naive, because you need to be very aware of what is your competition doing, and am I looking at their pages as well. So at least as a technology provider and end-to-end business intelligence provider, we're seeing a lot of our hotel partners are looking at forward-looking data at both market segment level and channel level, and data that has been paired the same level of market segment for your comparative set, and so that you're looking apples to apples and comparing. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a hotelier in Maldives, and I'm giving an example of a market that is open. And there's no point talking about India where borders are closed. They are actually ready, and they are all set to market their products in China, and just waiting for Chinese airlines to announce their commercial plans, commercial schedule of this. And being a GDS, we also have data on that front. So we are helping our partners to identify the right set of data, and most importantly, forward-looking data, which is granular, which can be dissected by segment and by channel, and where you can see whether which segments are moving in the times to come and which channels are the most profitable, whether it is my brand, whether it is direct business, or whether it is my OTA partners. And data will always present a story. Just touching on your question, what will revenue managers do? They are always looking on the horizon with right kind of data, and working with sales and marketing colleagues to come up with price points, to come up with promotions, and to say that, yeah, this is what we can do. And another point on technology is that at this point in particular, it's very important to know that probably retention even for city hotels, is a better bet than going and acquiring new hotels. And this is in particular for independent hotels than brand hotels. Brand hotels already have those technologies with them. But for an independent hotel, if I have to target, let's say in 15th August weekend, somebody at 100-kilometer distance who has stayed with me in the past, and let's say has spent between 10 to 15,000 a night, and let's say has spent through American Express as a credit card, and let me reach out to him. A lot of independent hotels are not in a situation to call out that data and reach out to those people. So this is where I think technology has to be smartly, and how safe is your hotel and what exactly is on offer, and what they can do, etc., etc. So I think these are some common use of technology that at least I have seen.
Sure. Thank you, Joy. Kamesh, how does your products contribute to these different kind of data sets that helps the revenue managers to look as a forward-looking data? Do you provide any forward-looking data?
Yes, in fact, these times have been as tough for technology as it's been for our customers. And also understanding, I think, the micro segments that have emerged during these times. So typically segments were just kind of labeled as leisure, business, MICE. Leisure has further gone into staycation, solo staycationer. It's gone to even drivecationer, because that's also an offspring of the leisure segment, as rightly mentioned by Amit and Parikshit. So this is something that what we thought and we've implemented is thinking about the customer, not the hotel, because the revenue managers, of course, are going to go back to the basics, rediscover a lot new ways to address that micro segment. So that doesn't just include data which is forward looking, it's also which content is being utilized and consumed by those micro personas. So somebody who's going to start domestic booking at a mobile app, the inclusions are going to be totally different. So for example, if I'm a drivecationer driving my own vehicle because I feel it's safe, I need to have a parking inclusion as well for the competitive side. So there's a lot more deeper that the data also has gone into, and we really kind of looked at the point of sales, the mobile apps, and a lot many inclusions and content. Of course, it also needs to be, inviting them to feel safe as well when they stay in a property. So whether the property is hygiene certified, that's again the topmost priority. So all of this actually is the new data for tomorrow. So historic dependencies have actually moved into something that is more real time basis the market changes. The moment they occur, so we launched the market drone, which actually empowers hotels. The moment any changes occur on any CRS or any bookings are changing basis the market opening, there's an alert which comes, which also talks about the rate plan, the rate codes, and even promotions the competitors are running, so that it can be consumed, dependable, and action to distribution. So I think now data has gone a lot more deeper, and also now looking at the TRM approach to the data, which it used to be around 6 months back. Yeah.
Thank you, Kamesh. Going back to Ram quickly, Ram, with all this forward-looking data is yet to come or about to come to you, because as we don't see any demand in the near future. So how do you exactly forecast? Let's talk about Q3 or Q4 or even Q1 of 2021. So what's the kind of data that you use today to forecast the demand level for your guys?
Well, for some reason, I expected this bullet to come to me, and I knew there was no way I was going to do this. No, I think the first thing is, I think like Joy and Kamesh mentioned, okay, it is extremely dynamic out there, okay. The numbers are going to vary greatly from market to market. So I definitely don't think there can be any blanket recommendations or predictions that can be made. Okay, one thing is for sure, whenever the markets open up, any market, it is going to be extremely dynamic at first, because things will open up, things will close, things will again open up, things might close again. This is something we have seen in China, we have seen in Southeast Asia and other markets, until of course a new baseline is formed. Okay, so that will happen maybe within 3 or 4 weeks of things opening up. We have seen that with our lockdowns itself in this country. But in terms of what do you do with whatever limited set of data that you have, I think the right way to actually forecast at this point of time is actually to do something like a scenario thinking forecast. Think about multiple scenarios, and this is exactly what most of the big boys like the McKinseys, BCGs of the world are doing. They aren't giving you a one single forecast; they are giving you a scenario-based forecast. So at least build it on 3 scenarios, stating if things are positive, this is what it is. If things are going to be absolutely negative, this is what it is, and this is what my middle route is. It is also important for you to kind of understand and take data relevant to the local domestic segment which stayed last year with you. What I mean to say it, if your total audience base was 100% last year, and only 20% of that was the local domestic audience, which is going to travel for the next 1 month, you need to understand that that is the set of audience you have exposed to. So any forecast that you are doing needs to be based on that particular audience. I am actually trying to discuss zero-based forecast with some of our hotels out there, which is basically that's like opening up a new hotel in a new destination.
Absolutely, that's the way to go about. If you're taking a scenario-based forecast, let's say for example, Chennai floods, right? So when Chennai floods happened, all hotels were almost shut, right? And so the only thing is the market was totally different, unlike how is it today because of COVID. So therefore, when the pace started, so how you actually tend to forecast your close range, your short range of next 30 days, 45 days, and 60 days, which becomes more relevant than, of course, looking at a long-term forecast where the seasonality will definitely play a critical role at a later stage, not to start with, right?
Yep. And of course, data monitoring is going to be very important. Like Joy mentioned, you got to closely monitor your competition. There's multiple tools. Demand 360 out there or Forward Star by STR. These are all great tools that is giving you some insights on how the market is trending, which helps you understand where you are. Also, some of our OTA friends have their own respective tools out there. But from your management portal, you are able to understand what is the business going into the competition. It's important for you to understand out there, and of course, what you pick up from any kind of promotions that you do. I think that is the way out there. There is going to be a lot of trial and error forecasting that is going to happen until there is some stability in terms of demand.
Yeah, until the demand picks up, and the sustainable demand comes into play. So having said that, what's happening about pricing? So today, is it going to be another chase to the bottom? We see the prices going haywire with so many offers, and almost every day it is flooded with your WhatsApp and emails. All kinds of offers coming up from all kinds of hotels. So, how does the revenue managers are coping up with this? Do you feel the pressure in slashing price, and how are you coping up with this to improve the occupancies in the short run? And by when do you think, or when do you expect the price correction to happen? I think we'll start with Devinder. Devinder, if you could just put in some comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Kumar. So pricing is definitely an important factor for your conversion. So it is not necessary that you set a price and you get conversion. So it's a discovery. It's an elasticity which you observe how your pickup is behaving on each change of the price point. So yes, you need to also monitor your competition. Ultimately, nowadays, what we are looking at is everybody's looking at the cash flows. That's why the price war is starting up. That's why everybody's getting into offers, staycations kind of offers, because that's a business which we are thinking in a short way to come in. Yes, so that's an operation expense they have to cover up. So definitely everybody would like to get some cash flow in instantly and stabilize themselves. So the price discovery will continue working, provided your comp set is also slashing the price. So you have to be in the market. It's a game of the occupancy driven market. It's not the game of the ADR driven market. You have to drive RevPAR through occupancy route. And going forward, so going forward, we will the stabilization. We may look that Ram has already mentioned that a scenario-based forecasting has to be created. But once we have vaccination, which is we expected by end of December or say first half of next year, then definitely a stability will come. Otherwise, there will be a lot of sporadic forecasting figures, and accordingly the pricing will be aligned to drive market share. The revenue manager has to look at each day pickup, whether its price is successful or not.
Thank you, Devinder. Ravish, would you like to add more comment?
So I did make a part statement. For me, it is important that the way we are assessing the market is in a 3-year strategy. Given that year one is going to be a complete destruction of demand, what really is important is that how we are watching what may be a destruction of demand that may follow, given that all of us are saying what may be the capability of market to hold on, especially the independents, the small chains. So while you may in a city have, in a pre-COVID days, you may have 10 or 15 hotels. I think it is important to see how many actually survive this 1 year. What is the capability of them to even survive this 1 year? And when the market open up, we may be opening up to a new reality where supply is very, very diminished. So you may have a demand that is replacing a shortened supply requirement. And therefore, it may just not be as gory as we are projecting it to be. How prepared are we? I mean, so heart goes out to the ones who will not be able to survive. Okay. And that's a reality. So that's how I'm looking at as to how to study. So this is the reason why I keep on talking about the 3-year scenario as to how the market will, again, probably with the vaccination in place, in the 3rd year may begin to look like coming back to the normalcy.
Thank you, Ravish. Sticking to more specific to pricing, my point of view is that hotels must understand that they need to fish where the fish are, right? Focus on travelers who are willing to travel right now instead of trying to attract people who aren't ready because pricing is not alone going to drive the demand. So therefore, is it a chase to the bottom? Because we have seen even in the best of the days that everybody cutting down, slashing prices, and going to the bottom. So how is this pricing coming up now? When especially when you see this desperation of picking up business, how is this observed in the OTAs especially? Amit, I'll ask this with Amit and followed by Parikshit. So what do you see in terms of desperation of hotels pricing themselves to attract demand?
No, I think it's you rightly said these are sort of nervous time. There are no sort of something which hoteliers can fall back on. But I think, as I said, there is something that the hotels can learn from the airlines here, right? And you rightly said that there is no point. Pricing will help if there's a demand out there, right?
Absolutely.
Time you don't want to be sort of be under the impression that everything is normal and you will be able to command the price you were able to. But I think the important thing here is to sort of look at in terms of how do you sort of attract people who are willing to travel and give them the right set of incentives, where pricing is one of the important, but it's not the only. And I think that's sort of, unfortunately what we are saying in some of the markets is where effectively hoteliers have joined the race to sort of, to be honest, today my concern is not the pricing. I'm not able to sort of, we are not in that phase where pricing is going to drive demand. But having said that, I'm saying that this is not going to be the case. Maybe in a 3 to 4 or 5 or 6 months from now, where things starts to get back towards normalcy, pricing will play an important part, and hoteliers should not shy away from using that intelligence. Otherwise, what's going to happen is what Ravish was pointing out is that some of ourselves will be rushing ourselves to our grave, right? Because just to sort of at the end of the day, there are operational expenses. These operational expenses are not going to come down. In fact, if nothing else, all this pandemic and the extra efforts in terms of maintaining the health and safety protocol, the operational expenses will go down for most of the hotels, right? So I think, this is something, as I said, the hoteliers can learn from the airlines as they've been opening up, and
Sure.
Thank you. Travel because of the pricing, people are going to travel just because in case if they need to, and I think price ourselves rightly to the segment is important. call today rather than just using pricing as the only lever. I think that's I would probably and unfortunately, I think we are in some markets we are seeing this being very, very intelligently used, and when I can look at the UAE hotels, Dubai and the other Emirates hotels are using that fairly effectively. But then there are certain destinations in India when I see the pricing there, I think there seems to be a a race to the bottom there.
Thank you, Amit. So pricing is the most critical profit lever. So back to Parikshit. Parikshit, I want you to throw some light on this in two elements, right? So how desperation hotels are today in pricing their products, believing that pricing could attract demand, which could be false at the moment, but as Amit says, maybe 6 months from down the line, it could make much more sense. On the other hand, what happens to your couponing, coupon discounting and other marketing offers that you have been extending for the last past years? Are you still planning to continue that, or what is your take on that? So I wanted to talk about these two elements. Yeah.
No, before I touch upon it, Kumar, I think I'm an eternal optimist. I see the glass to be half full even under these circumstances. Right. So, given whatever demand is available, 15%, 20%, 25%, whatever demand, I think I fundamentally believe there is something that you can do as a revenue manager to try and at least optimize or maximize whatever is available today. Right. So, a couple of things that comes to my mind. I'm not a core hotelier, but speaking to my hotelier friends all across the globe, a couple of things that many hotels are trying to do is, which is traditionally known as bundled pricing, right? So where you would probably have a room rate, but along with that, a few other price, giveaways, where you are not essentially trying to go overboard on discounting. You are trying to kind of, that demand is scarce in these times, but whatever demand you have, can you maximize revenue out of that demand? Probably is the attitude that many of the hotels are adopting, and it's a very smart way of doing things. So, for example, if it's a long stay kind of a scenario, while the room rate is less, if the F&B package is lucrative, can you maximize that? So, given whatever demand is available, that might be a strategy going forward. And I completely agree with you, Kumar. It cannot be a race to the bottom as far as pricing is concerned, because what you will do if you are getting into overboard of discounts is you're going to kill the brand on the longer term, right? So we all know that. You don't need an expert to come and tell you that. So that's there. But given whatever you have, what can you do? Obviously some bit of discounting would help at the room level, but can you maximize it by giving other add-ons which you are pricing? For example, a staycation spa package. Can you add in a spa, and then while you get the room rate down as a discount, you add the spa package on top of it and try and maximize it, right? So I think these are some of the tricks which are people like me would try if I see the glass to be half full, even under these circumstances. Coming to a specific point on OTAs, I think gone are those days of discounting. I think all of us have seen even pre-pandemic also, right? Last Jan, February, March, if you look at, I don't think there was at all heavy discounting which is going around, because fundamentally demand aggregation had happened, and and because demand was aggregated, there was no need to kind of look into those kind of skimming as far as discounting is concerned. I don't think you would see a lot of discounting and couponing coming back. I think fundamentally, as we have seen post the pandemic, it will be even tighter to expect strong couponing and strong discounting. You would see tactical offers. You would see tactical offers for certain set of users. I think users who are loyal to a particular brand, loyal to a particular OTA, a certain set of users who are actually affluent. Those set of users you will try to woo by using smart technologies to kind of target them and give them some lucrative discounts here and there. But gone are those days when you look at a one-size-fit-all discounting strategy across. So I don't see that coming back at all. And I think one of the panelists was also mentioning that how hotels should also look at their core customers who are actually out there in the market, who have stayed with them. Can you go and reach out to them, give them some discounts to kind of lure them, but then try and make it up by packaging the pricing better and make it up through an F&B or a spa package or anything that is associated.
Thank you. Well said, Parikshit. I'm sure all our hotel folks are listening to this very, very carefully. Quickly, I'll go for a quick comment from Ram. Ram, having heard what Parikshit and Amit said, how sensitive is pricing today, and the discounting that is happening, the chase to the bottom. So, what's your comment on that, Ram?
So one is, I totally agree with you on this. In terms of discounting only leads to price war. It's a everlasting cycle of people dropping rates because other person dropped it. It'll be never ending. In my opinion, pricing should be the last part of the decision of
Absolutely.
Okay. It's important to first understand what the customer is looking for today, and if what you're offering as a hotel meets their requirements. I mean, like how you see in the markets which have come back from or which are slowly starting to come back, price is not actually the key converting factor out there. Health and safety and flexibility of policies are actually more important to a customer than actually the lowest price. If I'm traveling, I'll actually pose the question back to the panel out here. If you're traveling today with your family for a leisure holiday, are you going to choose the cheapest hotel or the safest hotel out there? I'm sure all of you have your answers in your mind. So price is definitely not the safest and cheapest. That's a smart way. That's the revenue manager's answer, by the way. Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that the price plays a deal when everything is equal. Of course, the customer wants the cheapest price. Okay, when all things are equal, price of course plays a great deal. So I think that, again, I made this statement before, so it's important to understand the customer who is traveling and maybe curate an offer which is relevant to that particular audience. Parikshit made that statement about spas, etc. Whenever they allow people to open up spas, that would be a great way to add some value to your stay out there. I think this is also the time for you to kind of understand your post-COVID business mix and decide your pricing. And extremely important to work with your sales and marketing teams, because there could be some short-term closed user group deals that you can do, which doesn't actually drop your price in the public market, but this is happening in a very closed user group out there. Okay, it is. I don't know who made that. Maybe Ravish did it, saying that hotels actually look only at their database. I think there is a great opportunity for hotels to work with their partner database. For example, if you had a shopping arcade in your hotel, hey, how about offering a special deal to the users of that shopping arcade out there? Have you thought about it? Or maybe if reaching out to some of your vendors out there and offering a special rates for their customers, reach out, secure their database out there. So I think revenue managers and everybody today in the hotel is a revenue manager, because their job out there is to maximize revenue. So I think they need to start looking outside that box of traditional revenue strategies, at least for the next 6 to 12 months.
Thank you, Ram.